Okay, it's a beautiful day. Let's see if we can get this thing going. Before we go on, I just wanted y'all to know, I got a call today from the Appalachian soccer team. Appalachian State during the summer has like a summer league, all right? So it's kind of a program that allows them to have students who are in the soccer team be able to stay on campus during the summer, and they play what you would consider to be non-sanctioned games, or in other words, non-collegiate games. And they actually did this last year with the Boone Bigfoots, which was the baseball team. Well, they're doing it now, and I think they're called the Sasquatches or something like that. Okay. Anyway, they are looking for students who would like to intern, and they asked me to pass that information along. They are even looking for in the next year, because they've got all this stuff takes planning. They're talking about putting together a student led group to do things like taking tickets, to do their social media and those kind of things. And I think it's a great idea. It's a way, if you're looking, if you haven't got an internship secured, the internship will be in Boone, so you can stay in Boone during the summer if you want to. If all you have to do, and that's including everybody up there, if you just email me a resume, a one-page resume, I'll be more than happy to forward this on. It's just in the planning stages, but I talked to the soccer coach, and he's really gung-ho about this. And for any of you who have not secured an internship, and if you're still thinking about it, it's either an internship, I think, or international experience. I can't remember which one it is. But if it falls in your schedule, I would urge you to take advantage of it, okay? So just something for y'all to think about, okay? And if you have any questions or information about what the interning during the summer would be like for the soccer team, just email me. I'll be happy to forward that information on. Like I said, they're just in the planning stages for next year, but the possibilities is that you would have a job with Appalachian State. You wouldn't have credit, but you'd do some real marketing work. I mean, it would be as small as taking tickets, and it could be doing the daily social media for them. So they're starting with the soccer teams and the baseball teams. Who knows where it's going to go? So just email me if you're curious. All right. Let's finish up with this chapter 6 on retailing. So we started talking about retailing on Tuesday, and the discussion, we talked about the ways in which you make money in the retail environment. And of course, we look at two sides of the ledger. We look at ways that you can increase demand. And then what we talked about on Tuesday were the ways that we can optimize the costs that are associated with doing our work. So without further ado, let us go on and talk about the demand side of the things. We've already talked about several of these things before, but now we're going to talk about them in particular as demand side positioning strategies that retail outlets use. So the first one is bulk breaking. All right. Now, as we all know, manufacturers make enormous quantities, these gigantic quantities of the things that they want. But of course, consumers only wish to consume one item at a time. Depending on how far we break down the goods, ultimately that determines how much of the channel function that consumers are going to perform in and of themselves, and that also determines price. So my wife and I were just talking about vacations that we've got coming up for the girls and spring break and those kind of things. One of the things that we always like to do is we like to go to a condo or a townhouse if at all possible. We love to have a kitchen. The kitchen makes it so much easier for us to prepare meals for the girls. And one of the things that my wife brings along is she brings along a bottle of dishwashing liquid that big. Now, it should not surprise you that the bottle that is that big costs just the exact same amount of money as a bottle that is 8 times bigger. Why? Because the smaller sizes are more useful, all right? And the breaking down of those large quantities into the sizes that consumers actually want is one of those ways in which we create or we enhance the value of a given item. So if you notice, this is kind of interesting. In the last decade or so, you're starting to see another number that you see candy and soft drinks at. There's this magic number that you want to get under, and without giving it away, of course, it's 100 calories. If you look at the sizes and the way that the sizes shrink, they try to get to this magic number of under 100 calories as a way of being able to make the consumption more valuable for the consumer itself. Even the large candy bars, all right, if you notice, large candy bars many times are now in sections. And what they do is that if you look on the wrappers, they tell you how many servings are in there. And then what they try to do is make the number of servings equal calories of under 100. So just, you can look at a Mars bar, you can look at any of them, any bar like that, and you'll notice they're all cut up into sections that are reasonable, like we're going to share. Yeah, but my favorite is the M&M's peanut and the tear and share. I like that as a way of making people think, yeah, we're not going to eat all of this by ourselves, right? Anyway, so breaking bulk. Breaking bulk is one of those things that adds value to the consumer because the consumption becomes smaller and smaller, or let's just say a more exact quantity. Bulk breaking. The next is spatial convenience. And just think of spatially, just think about space. And what this means is that those items like this Coke that I bought, they are classified as a convenience item, which means I don't necessarily care how much it costs me as much as I can find it in the nearest location. So this Coke I bought this at the Billisack right next to Lowe's. And I bought this, I think, for $2.20. And this very same Coke, if you reach into the bin at Lowe's, is $1.75. Now, why? Because I did not want to go through the inconvenience of going through Lowe's. This is much more reasonable for me. The consumer is willing to be able to go to the nearest convenience place. It should also be said that because the risk of buying a Coke is not that extreme, that consumers do not want to spend a long time considering things such as value, the amount of dollars that it costs. Most goods that are required are what they call low in cognition, ones that you don't have to think about. You'll also notice that they are intensely wrapped around shape and color as the ways that we make determinants. When we look at the aisle, when we're going out the aisle in the candies, there are themes or colors that are predominant there because it makes it easier to make choices that way. So if I were going to say candy bar and it's a brown wrapper, what would that be? There's several of them. Yeah, Snickers is one of those. It's interesting because Three Musketeers used to have a white wrapper. And Three Musketeers was one of those candy bars that was getting lost. And if you notice the Three Musketeers now, they're silver. They're brighter. And the reasons why purely is because we use cues like that, what are known as peripheral cues, than trying to make, detailed decisions on this, except my brother. My brother will go 10 miles out of his way to go to the Walmart where the Coke cans are still 50 cents, then go right next to his corner or 40, 70. Anyway, so products can be classified by convenience, their shopping, and their specialty. And it's the categorization of these depends on our search or our shopping activity. I don't want to spend time thinking about it. I just want to reach in and I want to get it. And that's spatial convenience. Waiting and delivery time has become one of those issues that we've become a lot more flexible with, all right? And it's interesting because we were in one extreme before the pandemic, and now we're practically on the other one. What retailers have to gauge is how damaging you can be in an out-of-stock occurrence. Well, out-of-stock occurrences are no longer considered to be the hand of God thing. In other words, they're no longer considered to be something that is unavoidable. Quite simply, because of the situation we are in now, we're much more forgiving when it comes to items that are out of stock. However, goods that are considered staples, milk, bread, eggs, those things we don't forgive as much because we have to buy those things every day. It's okay if you run out of something that may be considered exotic, but if it is a staple, we tend to be not that much or that serious about it. It's kind of interesting when the Nintendo Wii came out. I remember I was in the IT world at that time. I remember that Nintendo, the word was that Nintendo was 6 months away from bankruptcy when the Wii was about to come out. But I had heard like 12 to 18 months before that the new Nintendo was going to have a user interface that was going to change everything. And so when the Nintendo Wii came out, I'm not sure if any of you remember this, it was 2005, 2006, there was a period of 3.5 to 4 years where you could not buy the Wii after November. But we accepted that because the product demand was so huge that we forgave it quite simply because believe it or not, it was an enhancement versus, if it's there. We actually do have this kind of fuzzy thing there in our heads where if it's so easy to get, we think to ourselves, well, isn't that desirable? Scarcity and speciality have their certain play. Now, variety and assortment are confusing terms, and in order to get this right, I was looking for a particular picture that would make it a little bit easier for you to understand, okay? So, what is variety and what is assortment, okay? Variety is the different classes, okay? The different classes of goods that are in any product or in any store. This is what's known as the breadth, okay? This is the breadth. The assortment is the depth, okay? It is the depth of each individual classification. And the assortment and the variety are extremely important when it comes to the outlets where they are sold. And so what does this mean? It means that there's a huge difference between a Harris Teeter or a Lowe's and a Walmart. And what does this mean? All right. In a Harris Teeter or a Lowe's versus a Walmart, the breadth in a Walmart will be the same as a Harris Teeter or a Lowe's. The breadth generally will be the same. However, in a Walmart, the depth is not as great as it is in a Harris Teeter or a Lowe's. So a Walmart supermarket will have just as many different items, but it won't have the depth of items that you will see at a traditional supermarket. So how does this manifest itself? So this is the kind you do in the market. I went into a Walmart. I just went in this morning because I had to return some pictures I got wrong. And I happened to walk by the mustard aisle, and this is an example. And I looked at the depth in terms of the depth of the mustards that are at a Walmart. And so I checked and I looked at it, and in terms of the assortment, they had about 12 different versions of sizes and types of mustard in a Walmart. Well, maybe about 15. Can't remember. Yeah, about that much. If you go to a Lowe's or you go to a Harris Teeter, the last time I was in the Harris Teeter, they had 72 different sizes and varieties of mustard in a Lowe's and a Harris Teeter versus a Walmart. Walmart does an excellent job in their breadth of items, but in terms of their depth, not so good. Now, I would even go so further as to look at a Dollar General, and I would find that if you look at the Dollar General model, the Dollar General model will have 85% of the breadth that you would have in a Walmart. They do a fairly good job of making that coverage, but the depth, okay, the depth is razor thin, and that's the way it is at a Dollar General. I mean, you might have 2 or 3 of everything, but you won't have the 15 and 16 or 20 things, because the categories that are in a Dollar General are different than the categories that you would have in a Walmart. You're wanting to at least have one of something for anyone who happens to come in the store. But remember that Dollar Generals are built around their convenience more than they are built around most of the other things. It's kind of interesting. I was talking to my wife. When you're marketing professors, you spend a lot of time talking about marketing. And the Dollar General right next to us, one of the things that she criticized was, well, why don't they have vegetables? All right, why don't they have, and this was like, I don't know, 8 to 12 months ago. And sure enough, if you go in the frozen food section of the Dollar General, they have vegetables now. It's like somebody was listening. So if you go to a Dollar General, they're actually expanding those things. If they had organic milk, we'd be there every day. I swear to you, okay? Okay, so breadth, depth versus breadth, which is assortment and variety. And it entirely depends on the mission of the organization, whether or not they're going to have that kind of breadth or not. One of the most overlooked of all of the demand side positioning strategies is customer service. Realize that most of what we see in every store is practically the same that you can see in every store. But it is whether or not we provide certain customer services determines whether our places have success or failure. In Walmart, we expect to have as minimal amount of customer service as possible. But I want you to think about it. Success or failure in retail organizations remember this, is to have exactly the amount of service that your consumers expect and want. And so if you're going to have a high priced tailor, someone who works on clothes, and you're going to go to like a Belk or something like that, and you're willing to spend the money to go there, you're going to want to have a professional who's measuring you. By the way, if you ever want to know whether or not the tailor that you're working with is a professional, see whether they're using pins or whether they're using chalk, all right, to measure you out. Professional tailors, the best one, use pins, all right? That's how they make sure that your suits are exact. That's the one thing. I think I've already said, I have a friend of mine who's a 6-figure tailor. And one of the ways is that he's one of the old school professionals is he uses pins to make sure that it's more exact than using the chalk. So the last thing that you have to realize is the general and administrative expenses is kind of the last of the things that they have in their ability to manipulate. Realize this, retailing is and always will be a labor-intensive industry until they figure out a way to get robots to be able to automatically stock shelves. You're still going to need people moving stock from one place to the other. Sales, general and administrative expenses generally are not considered cost of goods sold, except for the selling, which is why I'm always surprised when I see this. General and administrative expenses have to do with all of the costs that you deal with that don't directly affect the purchase or sale of an item, all right? How you manipulate these expenses sometimes are the differences between success and failure. And unfortunately, if you spend too little, that can be just as bad as spending too much, all right? So general merchandise retailers and hypermarkets like Walmart and Gap, per unit sale, their expenses tend to be lower. In high-priced department stores such as Bloomingdale's or Belk, they tend to be more. But the whole point is that if they didn't spend the money, they wouldn't be successful. And let me also say this is, if I'm selling the same goods as someone else, which is usually the case, I have very few ways in which I can make my product unique. And service, of all of these, service is the one demand side positioning strategy, if you'll notice, that doesn't necessarily take into account a product. It means how much I invest and how much I'm willing to give to my customers. So right outside of, right next to modern Subaru and modern Toyota, there's a place right there that does oil changes. And they do fully synthetic oil changes. I change my oil every 3,000 to 4,000 miles. I'm a nut. But I've had an engine burn up. So, once burned, twice shot. But one of the things that I like about that place is I've never had to wait longer than 10 minutes to get my oil changed. That is so critical and important to me. And there's many places in this town that you can go to get your oil changed. But for the fact that they're the fastest, that's ultimately what makes my determination that I will go there and nowhere else. Okay, so this is actually 2017 numbers. So if you look at Walmart, this is 2017. They're at $481 million a year, $500 million. And whenever you kind of think of stores, and if you're thinking of Amazon and where are they, they're actually right next to Costco in terms of numbers. But Walmart now in 2018 is somewhere around 600 million a year. So as strong as we think Amazon is still about 1/5 of the average size of Walmart. Of course, Walmart has worldwide 5,400 stores, if I'm not mistaken. Worldwide, they have 2.6 million people who are employed. They have 1.5 million employees in the United States. They're the #1 employer in the United States next to the federal government. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the enormity of the size of a Walmart. Okay, so just thought I'd pass that. So one of the current problems or issues, whichever way you want it, is that consumers are very increasingly comfortable with buying through multiple channels and all types of outlets. And it's one of the most current trends that we see right now is that where a consumer starts the purchasing process, very rarely do they end it in the same way as well. And that the purchase behavior varies not just by the market segment, but just by the way that we make our purchase decisions. There's so many different ways of going about it. And once again, we have difficulty with all of this switching around, but we don't want to change it because, as I've said before, when you have all of this multiple channel work going on, consumers buy more if they're using multiple channels. So there was this really interesting study that they show, and let me get to, let's see, this. And this kind of gives you an idea. This was a study done in UX Magazine. This is in 2015. And it kind of shows the consumer journey when they're buying things. So 65% of people, when they start to purchase a particular item, they'll start, 65% of them start on a smartphone, 25% start on a PC or laptop, and 11% start on a tablet. It's interesting to note, you start on the smartphone, then you continue on to your PC or laptop, and then 4% continue on to a tablet. If you kind of break down this information, and what it does is, so you do the initial lookup on your phone, you kind of, go through, Google or whatever the others. When the information starts to get a little bit more complex and you need to do a little bit more research, you'll move to a PC or a laptop, probably because you can see more that way, and you get to put in a more flexible amount of search information. And then finally you end or you continue on to the tablet. So 25% start on with a PC and a laptop. What's interesting I find with that is that they do sufficient amount of information search on a PC or laptop, and then they may use, I'm just guessing, but they probably use a smartphone to check on prices, to look through the list of that particular item. And then finally, 11% start on the laptop, and then 10% of those continue on to a PC. So the whole point of this is to realize is this is kind of the convoluted state that we have with the omni-channels, is that there's this blending and there's this convergence and merging of searching and all of these processes that they go through to ultimately make a choice. And it just gives you an idea that, many people thought channels was dead. And I mean, I've talked about this in the beginning when I first started. Channels was thought of as not as a robust, and now here we are 10 years later, and omni-channel rules. And for those of you who are in channels, who are in retailing or wholesaling, it's just a brave new world, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. So just to go through some definitions right now, internet selling or e-commerce reached about 2.29 trillion. And the biggest reason why, if you look at the three definitions, the #1 reason is convenience. The next is the ease of use on the internet, and then finally is the speed of access. Now, it's important to understand that those considerations change, all right, They change when you start to increase risk. There is no risk for a convenience good like a Coke or anything like that, or buying certain things, especially when the products are staples and you have confidence of knowing them. But when the stakes go up, they get higher. This is when you start to see the cross-channel stuff. Direct selling is the sale of a product in a face-to-face manner away from a retail location. And so these are the older traditional ways. Pampered Chef, Mary Kay Cosmetics, these usually work from an agent, and that agent is a direct representative of a particular product line. Direct selling channels are usually those that require demonstrations to understand how they work properly. I actually sold Pampered Chef 20 years ago, and I did it basically because of some of the stuff Pampered Chef had was cool, and that was really the reason why I threw the parties. It was interesting too. I like to cook, by the way, and so anything that requires a demonstration is more likely to be in a direct selling channel. If you go on the Home Shopping Network, one of the things that you'll see is many of the things that they sell are items that have to be demonstrated to be able to be appreciated. And so direct selling is any face-to-face manner away from a fixed retail location. And as I said, the items usually are demonstrations items. Now, the hybrid channel is the mix, all right? Where no single retail form is sufficient to reach the market, and where the target segment of service output demands are important. You know, there are many firms that are pure online sellers, but if you notice, there are a lot of them that are backing away from the purely online selling, and Amazon, that's the first one I think of. You know, I mean, and many of them combine brick and mortar strategies along with their online strategies. And as I said before, and I'll say it over and over again, the hybrid channels are the ones in which more money passes than just the traditional online normal selling. So I'll give an example. When I got tenure, I wanted to get myself a 75-inch television, UHD, 4K, QLED, and my wife said yes before she saw how big it was. Now, for me, the journey started when I was looking at the different models, and even though I was pretty confident, about what I wanted, I still had to go to a Walmart and actually look at it to see exactly what the picture looked like. And so ultimately, I chose a Samsung QLED 75-inch, and I bought it from Walmart, but I bought it from Walmart because it would do an at-home delivery. Okay. And the at-home delivery price was included in that. And this was awesome, the guy actually carried it into my house and helped me unpack it. And that was big for me. All right. So actually, I got the thing set up. I had the table set up ready for it. I was perfectly fitted. He helped me pull it out, helped me put the legs on, flipped it over, got it up. It was heaven. All right. Now she wouldn't do anything without it now. So she trusts my choice of TVs now. And by the way, anyone who wants to come over and watch the Super Bowl, I'm there. Okay. So anyway, hybrid chains. So they create a broader band awareness, and you can get all of this, but there's a need to control channel conflict. And they put that up there, but I don't know how you control it. I really don't, other than that the omnichannel is so powerful and so strong that the strength and power of the omnichannel damps down conflict in and of itself. There's the need to have system-wide coordination. Otherwise, the whole system breaks down, all right? It does pose a challenge to direct sellers But once again, you find that sometimes these things cure themselves, especially when it comes to unique things consumers do, like buy online, pick up in store. You need to be able also to devise the right performance rewards, so that the right channel members are motivated to perform. So I talked about this before. Callaway golf clubs in 2007, Callaway golf clubs were sold through pro shops that were connected to golf courses. All right. Callaways, when they came out, were like match weapons. They were built for your hands and your hands alone. You didn't go in to buy Callaway clubs, you went in to get measured for Callaway clubs. They took into things like your hand size, your inseam, your swing, so many other different things. And then 2007 came along and Callaway said that they were going to sell direct. Well, the pro shops erupted because the problem is that the pro shops make so much of their money off of selling golf clubs. So Callaway had to go through an agreement cycle, and they did. And what you found is that Callaway clubs are sold now directly, but the pro shops get a percentage, and that's important, okay? So there is channel conflict. There needs to be a series of rewards so that the members are motivated. But with all of that, success is to provide a seamless experience as consumers move from one to the next. Now, we talked about the channel captains in chapter 1. And I talked about power. And when I talked about power, originally all the power was in the manufacturers. And in 1996, the Harvard Business Review, Parasimon wrote an article that stated that power has forever fundamentally changed to the hands of the retailer. And the reason why of that is, of course, is that the number one big retailer, Walmart, has big enough shoulders to be able to push all of the other manufacturers around. So retailers dominate them now. And what are the reasons why? Well, one of the reasons why, and this was written in 2017 when it started, was the fact that retailers are approaching saturation. And what that means is that the number of outlets for manufacturers to go pursue their goods elsewhere, they're running out of. They can't increase their sales simply by moving to another retailer, because quite simply, there's no room left for retailers. And this was before the pandemic. One of the real sad things about the pandemic, folks, is there have been 130,000 restaurants in the United States that have closed permanently. And you know, if you've never been in the restaurant business, restaurants are owned by mom and pops. They're family heirlooms passed from one to the next. And those people will never get that back. And I mean, just think about what's happening in the retail trade right now, or in the real estate. There's 130,000 new places that are open. And the only thing that you can put them in is restaurants. So, I mean, and this is extended to retail outlets as well. And so when they're reaching saturation point in 2017, you have the great drawdown happening between 2018 and 19, and the pandemic right on top of it. So you can get an idea the manufacturers just simply don't have anywhere else to go, all right? Retailers also try to improve their productivity and lower their costs. You know, they want to be able to pass those costs down to the competitors. But the truth is that when they're trying to find some way of cutting costs, the only direct place they can go is to go directly to the manufacturers, okay? Those pressures on those companies means pressures on the retail buyers, the buyers that are in those retail establishments, to look for unique items. And what that also means is that retailers are now moving to their own brand merchandising where they have greater margins. And that's why, if you've ever, anybody been on an Aldi, been in one, so you notice all of the brand names that are there, the brand, it's private label brand, most of it. And the reason why is that's how a store like that can survive. It's actually a German model. It came, all these are from Germany. So here's the big one. Retailers can threaten not to buy most manufacturer products because they have so many alternatives. What? I can't sell Coke? Well, fine. Pepsi, I'm sure, will be happy to knock on the door. And the last is that the suppliers and the manufacturers in their own way are partly to blame for their own weakened position, because they've all muscled each other around quite a bit. They've all provided the impetus by cutting their own margins. And guess what? If somebody's going to cut their margins, you're going to take it. Not only that, but the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the other manufacturer and say, I just got a 15% discount. I'll be very happy to become a sole source, unless you match that discount. And so this is one of those things that happens. It's a vicious cycle. And unfortunately, there's really no way to stop it. All right. So what are, with this retail power, what are strategies that retail establishments use when it comes to muscling the manufacturers? So these are a couple of things that they can do. The first is a concept, what is known as forward buying, okay? And so what is forward buying? Forward buying is buying significantly more than they need. Okay. And so what this means is that a manufacturer is willing to give an enormous discount. And so what it means is that a retailer buys more, significantly more than they need. And then what they will do is they will stockpile those goods until they use them up. Well, the difficulty with forward buying, especially when the manufacturer initiates it, is it's the very same effect that you have during sales promotions. So a sales promotion is built around getting consumers to buy a good in a particular amount of time and hopefully to get them to switch brand loyalty. Well, we know through research that sales promotions do not affect consumer brand loyalty. They'll go back to the brands that they're happiest with. And the difficulty also with this is that it messes up the production curve as well, all right? The swings in demand, because they're so uncertain, because of those significant cuts, they can cause damage to the whole supply chain, okay? Another way that retailers can make more money is what's called a slotting allowance. And so a slotting allowance is when the grocery store, when they're wanting to have a new product, or let's just say when the manufacturer wants a new product and they want it to be in the best place possible, A slotting allowance is a premium location in the store to be put in an ideal place so that that good will prosper or has the best possible chance. The number one place in a supermarket, the number one places in supermarkets where slotting allowances are, where the most people pass by. Pardon? Yes, exactly, Freddie. At the ends, exactly right. If you look at the ends, somebody is paying dearly for those locations. All right. Yeah, exactly. And so because they started it, and once again, this was something that the manufacturers did. Look, we want to be put in this one place and we'll pay dearly for it. And I mean, you know, it's like, you know, rising to the bait. Of course you're going to do that. And now it's become one of those things that everybody does. Okay.
So those also have the highest margins.
Yes. Well, they don't necessarily have the highest margins, but they have the highest traffic. Okay. And the higher traffic quite simply means, especially if it is an unsought good, a good that's brand new, that, you know, if you were to relegate it to a normal space, it may have no chance of success. You know, you're going to give that item the best chance of being able to succeed, because the number one way that you find success in the selling of fast moving consumer goods is it's got to be tried. So you've got to find a way to get consumers to try it first. Yes.
What about like produce? Like I walk through the grocery store, produce always does the front door.
What's that again?
Produce in the grocery store.
Yes.
It's always like at the entrance. Is that there for a reason? That's probably one.
Well, it actually comes into two reasons. Generally, also the produce is there, but there's one other thing along with the produce. There's another department right next to the produce. Delis, exactly. And the delis are there because the delis, they make the most money off of as well. And so, yeah, you put the produce, which is the freshest stuff there, okay? That's another reason that you want the produce there, because of all of the goods that are there, those are the goods that are going to spoil the quickest. And so you want consumers to get that as quickly as possible. Now, it's really unique to me. Harris Teeter actually puts it over on the other side. And that always just, you know, bamboozles me. It's kind of interesting because the wine is the first thing that they've got, you know, in their aisles, but they have the delis there as well. You know, everybody's got what they consider to be their formula for success. I find Harris Teeter to be one of the more unique ones. And you know what's another thing about Harris Teeter is I find that their meat department is small. Now they have excellent meat, don't get me wrong, but if you go into like a Publix and look at their meat department, that's amazing. The Lowe's buys their meat from the North Carolina meat packers, which I find is interesting. They don't have an independent buyer for meat. I actually taught somebody in the MBA class who was a Lowe's person, but the meat at a Lowe's is excellent. So their kind of thing, Lowe's, their kind of mission is that they want to stay loyal to North Carolina. And so it's kind of a win situation that way. But slotting allowances, yeah, you're trying your best to get a new product to succeed. Now, there's another really, I'm not a fan of this, but it's what's called a failure fee. So the way a failure fee works is I've got a good and I really need this good to be successful. And so what a failure fee says is that if we're unable to sell a certain number of these goods, we're going to kick back money to you. In other words, we'll give $2,000 back for you being willing to put this product in. So it's got to meet a minimum sales target, usually within the specified rate. I don't like it because basically what it means is that the supermarket banks on failure. And there's this part of me, the very, I don't know, I wouldn't say vindictive part, but the concerned part of me that says that who knows how much you're willing to not push this product in order for it to succeed. But failure fees do work. I mean, they're effective, and there's a lot of impetus, like for you to be able to be successful in this. But to have a penalty for failing to meet a mark, I don't know. And then the last is private branding, okay? And private branding or store brands, like I said, it says here, they're popular in Europe, they're popular in the United States. The sales account for almost half of the supermarket sales, but in US retailers, they generally are not as, what's the word I want to say, successful as they are in Europe. And the truth is, and I've said before, private brands are no different from the brands that you would sell like Del Monte. It's not unheard of for you to look at a Sam's Choice can of peas and it'll say packaged by Del Monte in Iowa. So, I mean, private brands are vitally important to success, especially of supermarkets, but generally consumers have what they consider to be their traditional brands that they trust more. And so it's kind of an off and on, but you find this though, is that consumers in the last 10 years have turned towards private brands where they haven't before. So that way is, they're money savers, they're not exciting, but they save money. And, in this time and day, when you're paying $3.69 for gas, it's a good way to save money. So what are the effects of private branding? You try to have close substitutes for branded products, but you got to be real careful. In other words, you have to make sure that the label and the packaging are different enough. And that's one of those things you have to be very careful about. They are different enough. Retailers have to decide whether to affiliate their private label brand with the store clearly, or whether to have a hands-off strategy, which that basically means is you just stack it on the shelf like it's just another good, and you let the consumers decide, okay? And then finally, retailers enjoy a much higher gross margin with private. How high? Private label brands can make as little as 2% for the store. Excuse me. Oh gosh. National brands, okay? National brands like Del Monte and those brands, a store might make 2% on them. But a private label brand, a Sam's Choice of peas or corn or whatever, Walmart will make as much as 45%. What that basically means is, in terms of dollars, they have to sell 25 times the number of cans of peas to be able to make the same profit they would make with just one can. And so that's why private branding is not going to go away. And although we will have national store brands because consumers desire them, in the big run, private branding is really what's going to save stores. Supermarkets, they live on private brands, on their delis, and on their meat markets. Because those are the things that they make themselves and they have the highest margins for. It's interesting. So Lowe's bakes their own cakes, so does Harris Teeter, and so does Publix. But the cakes that are made by Walmart cakes are made in Bentonville, Arkansas. They make 40,000, my ex-wife used to work for Walmart. They make 40,000 cakes every night, freeze them, are delivered to the stores at 6 a.m. in the morning, and then they're iced when they get there. Okay? That's the way Walmart does it. So anyway, their cakes aren't that bad, but how can you mess up a cake? Okay. All right, we're done for the weekend. We have spring break coming up. I will send you your groups, your grades for the test should be finished. I didn't put on one of the bonus questions like I wanted to, so the next test I'll add another bonus question. Okay. Everybody have a great spring break. We're not going to go tubing. It turns out that they closed the snow tubing, so at least give you an idea of what the weather. Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was supposed to work tomorrow morning.
Okay, they closed it up. Yeah, yeah, we were gonna go on Saturday, but, oh, well, at least it says the weather's good, so. What do y'all do when what do? You just close everything down?
It's a zip line park in summer.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, cool. Well, we might be up. Have a good one.
Yes, sir, you do think.
See if I have a good vacation. Oh, wow.
So I got one for you and
Oh.
she drinks beer.
Yes, she does.
Probably a little shaken up because I walked like a mile and a half to get here.
Don't worry.
So give them a few hours and when you pour them,
Yeah.
there's still live yeast in the bottom.
Okay,
So leave about this much.
leave that much in the bottom.
And try to do it as like one single like smooth
Thank you.
pour.
All right,
And,
one smooth pour.
Yeah, and they're pretty good. They're really unique taste because it's like German style, like forward malt, but
Uh-huh.
it's also hoppier than most